Hello everyone, welcome to round 3 of the University Chess Championship 2025. I'm playing for my team, the University of Birmingham, on board 2. If you haven't seen the previous rounds yet, check out the playlist below, so spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen them yet. But we won our second round 4-0. We drew our first round 2-2 because it's 4 boards per team. And considering we're the bottom seed by a country mile, we are doing very well so far. And we come up against King's College London. Now, KCL are an interesting team because they're board 1 and board 4, I believe, are both women's FIDE masters. And they're actually sisters, I think Singaporean, if I'm correct. So very interesting that our board 1 and board 4 have to take those on. But my game first against Rohan Shiatis goes for d4. I play c6. As you guys know, if you know the channel, I play the Slav Defense against d4, but I like to delay the move d5 to invite my opponent into a Caro Kann if they so wish. My opponent doesn't want to go into a Caro Kann. He plays c4. I play d5. And this is a very, very interesting game. And I'm sure I'll have put something a little bit clickbaity in the title, but it's a really interesting game. Like, I'm not taking the mick. I'm not taking the mick. So d5, knight f3, knight to f6. This is all mainline stuff. Knight c3, e6. By playing e6, I'm inviting my opponent into a Cambridge Springs defense, which, if you haven't seen the Cambridge Springs before, I made a really good video on my channel. Just search up like Chess Centurion Cambridge Springs. It's a great opening, and that video shows it off very nicely. But my opponent plays after e6, e3, declining the Cambridge Springs, essentially. And the point is that his bishop is blocked in for the time being, but white is going to play e4 at some point in the future. He's going to set it up with moves like bishop d3, castling, maybe queen c2 to support an eventual e4 push, which will liberate this bishop. That's the idea. Of course, I'm also blocking in my light squared bishop, so my plan is either to play e5 in the future, or b6 and develop my bishop out this direction. I can do either, and white can also go b3, bishop b2 if he desires. Knight bd7, queen c2, bishop d6. This is just very normal development. Bishop d3, castles, castles. The computer often likes taking on c4 and going for a quick e5 here, which is perfectly reasonable, because the idea being that we're also preparing to bring our bishop out if there's a trade. Like, let's say things get traded here. Black is slightly better, and the win rates in this position are like over 60% for the black pieces, which is nuts. This bishop's ready to potentially reroute itself to g6. The rook's probably going to come to c8, the queen probably to c7, or even e7. It's a very nice position. But we don't go for that. I play the move h6. The reason I play h6 is because I'm anticipating the move e4, and I don't want to allow bishop to g5. h6 isn't necessary. I just personally feel quite comfortable with the pawn on h6, because I don't find this bishop particularly scary if e4 is played, let's say, in this position, because it can't come to f4 and it can't come to g5, so I'm not too fussed about it getting liberated. My opponent goes b3. I take a little bit of a think. Actually, no, I only take about 20 seconds because there is a 10-second increment. And I play the move e5. And I'm very aware that my opponent can give me an isolated pawn. After takes, my opponent, I think, spends a minute in this position. Yeah, he goes f4. Now, I think there was a problem with taking here. Yeah, I can take with the knight. The knight is pinned to the rook. Although the computer thinks you can go for this, although this seems... oh, there's bishop a3. This does seem a little bit risky, though. So let's say I move like bishop b2 here. I have knight to b4, hitting the bishop, hitting the queen. My queen is also hitting the bishop. If my opponent gives a check here, he has to find queen e4, maintaining defense of the bishop. And this is just a bit of an uncomfortable position for white to be playing, really. So my opponent takes on e5. He has to take on e5, because if he plays a move like bishop to b2, I'm going to fork his pieces, obviously. So what else can you do? Obviously, you can't retreat the bishop and allow e4 and let me take a bunch of space. This is just obviously bad for the white pieces. So, d5, knight e5, knight e5, bishop to e5. He takes on e5 with the knight, because otherwise I'll probably take his bishop. If, like, bishop b2 here, well, I can take the bishop, but I can also take here, ruining the pawn structure, and this actually looks pretty scary for white to try to defend. So, knight e5, bishop e5, pinning the knight. My opponent plays f4. Now, f4 is the move that I was calculating. Although it's not an amazing move in this position, it has been played 6% of the time. I assume my opponent was worried not only about this, but about this pin, which he said he was concerned about, but later thought that it was a mistake. So I retreat my bishop. I think that c7 is the obvious square rather than d6, which blocks my queen's access to the d5 square. King h1. Now, king h1, my opponent spent about 3 minutes on. The problem in this position for white, which my opponent probably... Well, this is why he thought it was a mistake to play f4, is I'm going to play rook e8. And how on earth are you going to go e4? Because e3 is a weakness. If white develops lazily, then I'm going to go bishop b6, targeting the pawn, pinning it to the king. I'm going to play moves like rook to e8, maybe queen to e7, maybe knight to g4. And this pawn is really going to have a hard time. So, my opponent goes king h1. So if I go bishop b6, he can go for e4, I assume. Although not immediately because of knight g4 with, yeah, lots of different threats arising. So that's the idea, though. That's the idea. I go rook e8. Rook e8 is not only designed to hit the pawn, obviously, but also to control the e4 square, because I don't think you can play e4 right now. There's bishop f5 in this position, apparently. Ah, yes, okay. Knight f6, queen f6, the rook is hit. And, I mean, black just has a lot of activity in this position. So, my opponent takes on d5. And here, you may be tempted to take with the knight. And as you can see, the evaluation bar, it thinks it's fine, but it doesn't really love it. Because white gets to move e4 in, and then can probably go e5 and take a bunch of space. You have to kind of break some of the typical principles in chess and take with the c-pawn. It does give you an isolated pawn, however, you can work around it quite well, and the point is that we maintain our control of the e4 square, so that if e4 can't be played, e3 remains a weakness forever. I'm just going to close my window a sec. A little bit chilly. But my opponent goes e4 anyway. He has to get rid of the weakness. If he tries to defend too much... Well, actually, here I can take on f4, interestingly. Let's say bishop d2, developing passively. Bishop b6. If e4 now, I can actually go knight g4, and again, these threats re-emerge. So my opponent plays well. He plays e4. Take. And here, I spent a while in this position trying to figure everything out, because I felt like I should be able to take advantage of this position. Now, the computer's top move is knight d5, declining the knight trade. I thought that trading the knights was good for white, because it wasn't clear where I was developing this bishop, and b7 is a weakness. So what did I do? I sacked the rook. I spent 3 minutes in this position, and I sacked the rook. The computer calls this a blunder. As you can see by the evaluation, it thinks that white is better. But how? Bishop e4. What's the point? The point is queen to d4. Hitting the bishop, hitting the rook. Now, why couldn't I have done that immediately? Well, I can't. Not only because bishop b2 exists, but also because knight takes f6 comes with check. And white is fine. I also can't take here bishop e4 and then play this, because bishop to h7 saves the bishop with tempo on my king, and then bishop b2 gets played, and this actually looks relatively scary for black to deal with. So, my thought process was, I can sack the rook, and after bishop takes queen d4, there's no bishop to h7 because my knight controls that square. Right? I thought this was genius, and my opponent thought this was pretty genius because, well, he's on very low time here. He spent 5 minutes on the move e4. Because he spent a minute and a half, and he believed me. And he took on b2. And things get wild. What should white have done? Try and find the move for white here. Save the game for the white pieces. This is not easy. Not easy to spot. But if you know there's a way to win this with white, maybe you can find it. So pause the video, try and find the move for white. It's cool, it's calm, it's collected. It's bishop d3. And after queen a1, not bishop to b2, allowing queen to a2, but bishop to e3, taking up the d4 square, making sure a2 is defended. The best I can do is sack my queen for the other rook and play bishop to d8 and just be losing, essentially. The point of bishop d3 is that bishop d3 saves the bishop and defends the rook, so that after I take here, this bishop can move and this rook is defended. That's very difficult to see with low time on the clock. And my thought process with the rook sacrifice was that even if there's a way for white to defend, one, he's only got 5 minutes on the clock. This is a very hard position to figure out with 5 minutes on the clock. Once you see the solution, you can go, oh yeah, of course that works. It's not that easy. Secondly, I thought that worst case scenario, I get a position where I am down in exchange, but have a serious, have some serious counterplay, which is exactly what happens. My opponent plays bishop b2, I play queen e4. White would be losing here. Like, let's say he goes for a trade. White would be losing because I have 2 pieces for a rook. But white has queen c7, and I saw this. Find the move for black. There's one move that black can play, otherwise he's completely lost. Bishop h3. The pawn is pinned to the king, and we are threatening checkmate. Now, my opponent here played rook f2, which is a good move. He told me after the game that he didn't like his move, and he thought he should have played rook to f3. This is the move I calculated. Rook f3 is what I calculated, because not only do you prevent checkmate, but you also attack the bishop. However, this is losing for white because of one move for black, which I saw all the way back when I stacked my rook, which I was pretty pleased about, to be honest. The move, after rook f3, is rook c8, defended by the bishop. And what does the queen do? If the queen tries to trade herself off for my queen, I sack my bishop. King takes rook c2. White has no time for a queen trade. If the king retreats to the back rank, I just take on f3 and you can't defend. If the king maintains defense of the rook, I have queen to g6. If the king moves, queen g... No, not queen g3. Queen g4 is mate. The only other way is to sack the queen. Okay. What if white retreats the queen, I don't know, to a5? Again, I just take. If the king moves, I just take the rook, obviously. You have to take, and I get this check in, and you can't block because of the pin. That's the whole point. And I can always add my knight into the attack if I really need it. So my opponent thought he blundered by not playing rook f3, but his move was actually better, rook to f2. The point now, of course, is that rook c8 doesn't work, because after queen e5, I can't take here because the rook will take back, and I cannot attack with tempo. The rook defends the c2 and g2 squares. So, okay, I should have actually asked you to try and find the move, but the only move here again for black is knight g4, attacking the rook. And the bishop is pretty much trapped. The bishop can't move, but for the time being, the pawn is pinned to the king. Here, I was hoping for rook f3, and again, I wanted to go for this idea, giving a check on e2, with the point being my knight controls the f2 square. If the king retreats to the back rank, I can take the bishop, or I can just take the rook, or I can deliver a check on h2 first, and then, like, take the bishop or something. If you go to g3, I didn't actually calculate this out, but the computer just says h5, and I'm threatening this. If rook here trying to defend, I apparently have knight to e3, threatening this. And if you sack your rook, I am winning somehow. Well, at the very least, I can pick this bishop up and have equal material with a winning position. Well, actually, I'm up material, up a pawn with a winning position. All really complicated stuff. But my opponent, he plays well. He goes rook to d2. Now, this is not the most accurate move. The most accurate move is queen c2. Giving up the rook, well, giving the exchange back and playing this position. Opposite coloured bishops, as long as white can survive, this is a draw. However, white only has 2 minutes on the clock. I have 8. Rook d2. Here, I find the best move. Rook e8. Only move. The point is that I'm threatening here, here, and here with checkmate. You also can't move your king to try and get out of the back rank because I also occupy the f2 square. You also can't retreat your rook to defend because I have mate on g2. Very complicated. My opponent finds the best move for white. Try and find it. I actually missed this move after I played rook e8, but my opponent, very, very accurate. Try and find the move for white. Queen c5. A fantastic move. Not only defending f2, also defending g1. A really, really powerful move, to be fair. Here, I took on f4. Better was taking on g2 and playing knight to e3. And if rook to g1, knight g2. If rook takes, I have queen b1, rook blocks, and queen b2. My queen maintains control of this important diagonal. I'm up a pawn, and the white king is very, very weak. I didn't play that. I took on f4. And there's actually one move here that the computer likes for white. I don't think either me or my opponent would have found this. And it's queen to d6. I can take. You can't take with the rook because your queen hangs. If you take with the king, rook e2, deflecting the rook away from the queen, and black wins. If the king moves, then he's just getting mated. After... Wait, no, not that. Although that does actually mate still. But anything mates the black king, basically. Sorry, the white king. So white needs to go king g1, queen d6, rook d6, rook e2, bishop c3, bishop c6. And to be honest, considering my opponent has a minute left on the clock, I'm doubtful that he can hold this. But he takes my bishop. And I can't really blame him, because I'm also threatening to mate him on h2. So he takes, so the rook defends. Take, take, take. This is what I calculated. Rook f1. Here, white is clearly trying to gang up on the f7 pawn. So I find the best move, queen e2. Hitting the rook, hitting g4. The queen comes back to f2. If the queen comes to f5 to defend, and attack, I was going to play queen here, forcing a queen trade, and I thought I could win this endgame. My opponent plays queen to f2. Find the most accurate move for the black pieces. Queen e4. If the king moves, I take the pawn, so you have to block with the queen. Take, take. And here I mess up. The sequence should be pretty obvious. Rook e1, king g2, rook f2. The king moves and I take here. If the rook blocks, this is just a winning king and pawn endgame, because I'm just up a clean pawn. It should be completely winning. I picked my rook up. I picked up my rook to move it. And I'm travelling to e1, except I go to e2. And my opponent reaches for his king, and then he realises, wait, I didn't go to e1, I went to e2. Now, why on earth I did that, I don't know. Because rook e1, king g2, rook to e2 means that I can pick up the pawn with check. I go up 2 pawns, and that should be winning. But my thought process was that I can keep his king stranded on the back rank. However, I allow rook to c3, or rook d3, doesn't matter. And after rook a2, rook c8, king h7, rook to c7, my opponent has a double attack. I play accurately, I go b5, take, a5, rook b7, b4. My rook defends the a5 pawn, my a5 pawn defends the b4 pawn. The rook comes up to b5, and I blunder. Here, the best move is g5. The king is still pinned to the back rank. If the king moves, I'm supposed to bring my king in to f6, and I think run it all the way towards the rook. If I get checked, I of course just come up the board, and my king will invade, and I will win. And then I get to c6. I force the rook away. And then I can go rook a3. And if rook to a8 attacking my pawn, so that if takes takes, now I can do that. Oh, well, here I take on h3 with check. But let's say I can't take on h3 with check. Let's say I go rook a3, rook f5, and I push the pawn. This is completely winning, because my king is not allowing this rook to stay on the b file to defend. I missed this. I rushed myself. I went rook to b7. Sorry, rook b2. I thought this was winning, but it isn't. Rook b7 is a mistake, apparently, because I can go king g6 and bring my king up. I didn't really see this. I thought it was better to get my pawn to the second rank. However, apparently it's better to leave the pawn further up the board so my king can get behind it and get shelter. As you will see, however, we get this position where the king can't move. If the king ever comes to the third rank, I give a check and I promote. And everything is defended and I win the game. If the king ever tries to come across, I always have rook h1 and you can't take because I will win your rook. So the king is stuck on these two squares. The rook is stuck on the b file. The pawns can't do a whole lot. No, that's not what he played. He played rook b5. He just has to shuffle the rook. And I run my king over, take, run my king up the board. I was a little bit concerned about this pawn, but I thought it should be fine. But even if I get close to my pawn, I can't do anything. And eventually I have to trade off my pawn for the g6 pawn. And try and push, but you just can't push here. We agree to a draw in this position, and I throw away what should have been a completely winning position, a completely winning endgame, and I just throw it away. Very frustrating. I need to learn my rook and pawn endgames. However, I was still very happy with this game, because my opponent is more like a 2100 or so rated player. Again, these ratings aren't accurate. I'm obviously not 1745. I was very happy with my rook sacrifice earlier in the game. I thought that, although the computer doesn't love it, that's a very practical rook sacrifice. And my opponent said that he was really impressed with how I played it after the game, in the middle game, finding several only moves and being really, really aggressive. I was really happy with that, and it filled me with confidence. But how does the team do as a whole? Well, obviously I draw my game with the black pieces, which, although I should have won, is obviously a good result. Our board won, Luke. I'm actually only going to show you part of the game. Well, I'll show you the whole game, but I'm going to skip through a lot of it. A lot of it isn't all that interesting. Luke gets a better position against this King's Indian-esque perk sort of setup. But his opponent, being Women's FIDE Master, does a fantastic job of turning the game around. And ends up going up a full rook. Well, up an exchange. But watch this. Watch this. I'm just going to show you a little bit of this game, but watch this. His WFM opponent takes the knight, allowing queen takes g6, and this is just a perpetual. The king runs, but the king can never cross the b file. The king has to go straight back, and they get a perpetual check and agree to a draw. His opponent did not have to take the knight. He could have just played king h7, defending the pawn. The queen can try and come in and deliver more checks, but I don't think there's anything. Oh, here you apparently can't take? Ah, no, sorry, there is still a perpetual. But I don't know, king h7, queen here, rook e8, just stopping the infiltration. The knight will have to retreat, and the pawn can just march through. Luke secures a draw on board 1 in a bit of an upset. And it's 1-1. Our board 4 loses. A bit of a brutal game, to be fair. So we're 2-1 down. However, Rob is playing on board 3, who you may remember from round 1. And Rob opens with an Italian. I'm not going to explain all the theory because I literally don't understand it. However, he goes up a pawn early on in the game with a very good position. His opponent tries to fight back, but what ends up happening is that the h-file opens up, Rob is still up a pawn, and whilst his structure is very, very strange, his knight has a clear and obvious way to get into the position. Queen e2, rook over, knight f5, that's a lovely knight, and it can never be kicked out properly. Queen c5, queen e4. I assume setting up here, here, right? Like, let's say a nothing move, yeah. Knight h6 take, here, and mate. Very nice attacking idea. Of course, his opponent sees it and drops the knight back to cover the square. Take. Rob has tripled pawns, but it doesn't matter. The queen moves over. The rook moves over. The queen moves again, threatening to take the rook because of the pin on the pawn. The rook moves to defend the other rook. The queen goes back. If we get a queen trade here, Rob is winning because he's up a pawn with a lot of pressure against his opponent. And I don't see how black really holds this. I mean, the pawns are probably just running through as well, which should be enough to win in the long run. His opponent knows this, of course. Doesn't trade. Moves the queen. Things get a little bit hectic. If take and the rook moves, then the queen can come to c6, and this king is very stranded. Black's best move is to offer a queen trade here. And after, like, queen e6, king f8, this is very uncomfortable. But his opponent takes on a2. Rook h6. It can't be taken because of the pin, of course. If take, then take. Takes on f5. Here, the computer thinks that white is completely winning if he finds queen h4, which he does. Rook f6, rook h8, king f7. There's mate in 10 if Rob finds rook g6, which he does. If this, then mate. So the king runs, king e6, check. King runs, mate in 11. If rook to d8 check is played, forcing the king here and playing queen e4, forcing the king further up the board, rook c7, apparently there's a mate brewing, but it's also not clear. After this, if it, well, the check here can't be given actually because the queen covers this square, and essentially black runs out of counterplay. But queen b4, c5, rook d8, king e6, there's mate in 5 if Rob finds queen b5. A very strange move. He plays queen e4. Rook f5. Rook e8. Queen e5. Mate in 5. If Rob finds rook c8 and after king b5, queen e8 check. A very, very interesting geometric idea. If the king goes here, and queen to d7, the king is forced up the board, rook a8 is mate. But 30 seconds left. Check here, check here. Rook goes back to g4. Now, I can't really explain that move, to be honest. I don't know why that was played. He clearly only had 8 seconds left on the clock, because he gets 10 seconds per move. Rook g6 looks like it wins, to be honest. Although there's here, king d2. Maybe he was concerned about take, but you just trade the queens. I don't know, but it's high pressure. And his opponent blunders anyway. Rook takes, queen to b3, threatening this. King goes back to defend. Queen goes back to attack the rook. The rook retreats. Rook f6, attacking f3, rook defending. a5, king to c2. a4, threatening to invade with the queen. c4 check, disconnecting the queen from the b3 square. King goes back, check. King goes back. Queen d8. I don't know if I understand this move. If rook f3... Oh, okay, yeah, rook e7. Very, very, very cool idea. So the rook blocks. The queen goes back. If take, then take. The rook retreats, offering a queen trade. Rob declines. Take. f3 is defended by the queen. So the queen moves over. Rob apparently could take here with check first and then play f4? And if take, check, king goes up, f5. If a check is given, then the king goes to b3 and is safe. Very, very tough again. Queen d7. offering a queen trade. Of course, black has to decline. The queen goes back to defend the second rank. The queen attacks e3. Queen defends. Queen moves over again. Push. b5, creating counterplay. e4. King up. f5. b4 is a very cool move. Trying to get a passed pawn to create some counterplay. Rob throws the game away, apparently. With e4, he has to play f6. And if b3 check king d2, and if this pawn is pushed, f7, and if you push, Rob queens first, and can deliver a check on c5, and it's mate in 3. Of course, but he has 20 seconds. a6, take. Apparently the losing move. e6 has to be played. Take, check. King moves over. Pawn takes. Black is winning if he goes a2, which he does. The queen moves out. It's minus 96, mate in 22 for black, apparently. But these are not computers. Queen goes back. If a promotion, queen to d6. There is queen to c6, though. And if queen b8, king a6, there is no check. But neither of them see this. Instead, I've gone a few moves ahead there. Instead, there is a check given, and the queen goes to b2, but queen to f4. Queen gives another check, trading the queens. The king moves away, because if he takes here, then black will promote with check, which will be very, very important. So the king moves away. Pawn pushes, promote, promote. They both have new queens, but it's 3 pawns versus 1. Check, the king runs. d3 falls, but white has serious counterplay, although it's apparently drawn. And now it's winning for white. I mean, it's just completely insane. The pawn keeps pushing, and white is going to promote. And Rob is winning because black's pawn is just too slow. And we have a check here. And after king to a4, queen b4 would be mate. So his opponent resigns in this position. And we draw the match 2-2 against UCL, which is an incredible result. Some crazy games from that round. Some incredible swindles. And I mean, insane. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you haven't seen the previous episodes yet of this tournament, why didn't you check them out already? Check out the playlist down here for the previous episodes. And if you want to see the Cambridge Springs opening, which I mentioned at the start of the video, check out the video appearing up here, because that is a really, really interesting opening, and I love it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.